Welcome back, everyone, to this week's episode of From the Desk of Paulina Luna. We have a lot to cover this week, starting with the Biden White House redefining the term recession. A lot of news coming out of Portland and some of their terrible legislation. We have tons to cover with Gen Z on the streets, which should bring alarm to you. Our Florida Man and Woman of the Week, covering an update on Taco Gate, and of course, we'll be wrapping up this episode with some questions from all of you. This is From the Desk of Paulina Luna. My name's Paulina Luna. I'm pro-life, pro-God, pro-gun, and anti-globalist. All right, so starting with one of our first weirdly bizarre topics coming out of the White House. So we all know that this administration and the Democrats have worked overtime at redefining the word woman. But come to find out, they're also starting now on the word recession. The White House put out a smart press release over the weekend where they decided to define what a recession actually is. While some maintain that 2 consecutive quarters of failing real GDP constitute a recession, that is neither the official definition nor the way economists evaluate the state of a business cycle. As you all know, the Biden White House refuses to admit that we are currently in a recession. Although we have inflation peaking over 9%, many home prices around the country are now being slashed anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000. Granted, here in the state of Florida, because we have Governor Ron DeSantis, obviously the world's best realtor, we have a lot of people coming here, but that's an artificial market compared to the rest of the country. We're in big trouble. And I can tell you that redefining the word recession isn't going to make it any bit easier for the American people or small business owners that are seeing the direct impact of these terrible regulations and increasing gas prices. Of course, the Biden administration can admit that we're currently in a recession 2 months before a midterm. Why? Because they already know that they're in the toilet with the American voters, especially in regards to their terrible legislation. But imagine admitting this right before a midterm. And they go on to continue to say, it is unlikely that the decline in the GDP in the first quarter of this year, even if it is followed by another GDP decline in the second quarter, indicates a recession. So I guess the real question is, if this isn't a recession, then what is? See, what you're finding is this government, just like they did in the 2020 election cycle with the Hunter Biden laptop, will hide information from the American people if it means saving face. Even though plenty of smart people agree that our country is in big trouble. And I can tell you that when President Trump talks about this, he says the only way out of this is through American energy independence. A lot of people will try to say that, oh no, oil's bad for the environment. That's actually false. We have some of the cleanest oil here in the United States. Not to mention, we don't have to go to places like Venezuela or Saudi Arabia to get oil. As you all know, oil contributes to a lot of the trucking costs that people will absorb when they're moving and transporting goods around the country. And so when you're seeing an increase in these prices and an increase in goods at the grocery market or at home good places, you'll understand that it is directly correlated. So what are some of the biggest signs that we have out of a recession? The first thing is going to be a social decline. So as some of you may know, I actually was in the military for 6 years. And during my time in service, I was actually stationed in Portland, Oregon at the Portland Air National Guard unit. And this video is honestly heartbreaking. I can tell you once I saw it and I actually realized, having been stationed there, what these people are going through. This is a direct cause and effect of bad legislation, and a lot of people are suffering. But because of their bad liberal legislation, especially being soft on crime and soft on the homeless demographic, not even helping them, but almost encouraging drug use, it's the lower income communities and the middle class that suffer the most, as you'll see in this video below.
I'm living in a nightmare neighborhood.
It's really scary.
For years, these neighbors have been watching the city's homeless crisis spread across parts of southeast Portland. Now it's right outside their front door.
I want to cry. I just want my house back.
Christina Hartnett lives on 80th and Powell, where a majority of the campers stay.
My lawn is now becoming a public bathroom.
She fears leaving her house just to go to work.
And it is scary when you have grown men meth raging in your driveway. The last thing I feel safe doing is going out and saying, hey, can you please move so I can go to work?
Calling the police in city is an everyday chore with little reward.
So far, no one has come to help us.
Central City Concern Clean Start crews assessed this site Thursday. It was one of about 1,900 other campsites reported just this week. In the past 10 days, they found 272 encampments that pose a greater health and safety risk, which is why they haven't removed the camps in this neighborhood. But just getting the city to come out and assess it has been a full-time job.
I have to report from like four different bureaus, and then I have to report that report to a report, and then I have to report that report to a second report, and it's the only way to get any kind of traction.
I feel like nobody hears us. Nobody cares about us.
This mother didn't want to be identified on camera, afraid of retaliation from those living on the streets. She rarely lets her children outside to play.
It's very sad, because they're just kids, so they want to play.
I don't know where they're coming from.
Tess has lived in this neighborhood for 35 years. These boards now cover her front door windows after they were smashed by those living on the streets. She also installed security cameras around her house.
Scared. Most of all scared because I don't know what they're going to go next.
It's also affecting a nearby restaurant.
It unnerves our customers when they pull in and they see people overdosing on the sidewalks out in front of our restaurant.
It is going to take one of us getting severely hurt or killed before they will do anything to come help us.
Meanwhile,
please come help me.
Does our city do something about it? Are they doing something about these people that need some help?
this never-ending cry for help continues.
So what's interesting about this and what you guys will see is the state of Oregon in the last couple of years has legalized some very hardcore narcotics. When I was stationed there, I remember driving to work one day and actually seeing, it was during a really, really cool night, and seeing that law enforcement had taped off a crime scene. And what was really sad about that is obviously when people are using heroin, they're not aware of their surroundings, and they're surely not aware of the temperatures. And because of the hardcore drug use in some of these homeless encampments, you're actually finding that people are accidentally overdosing, and they're also killing themselves because they're not even aware of how cold it's getting outside. Portland, Oregon could be a really cool city, but as we're seeing, the direct impact of this bad legislation is not affecting the people that are very wealthy that have private securities, for example. It's not impacting those that live in gated communities or have mega mansions with fences. It's impacting the middle class. The same middle class, mind you, that was largely almost eliminated during COVID-19. See, remember, we had this massive expansion of corporation, for example, places like Amazon, and while small businesses were closed, massive chain operations were kept open. And that's exactly why what we're seeing right now in Portland, Oregon, or Seattle, Washington, or San Francisco, California, or New York City, New York, this is exactly what we don't want expanding on the national stage. See, big government is never your friend, and the expansion of overregulation never does anything but hurt those that need it the most. Again, places like these liberal states have also pushed for defunding the police, the same police that are supposed to be enforcing law. So while criminals that do drugs and get passes for peeing and pooping on lawns and sidewalks, the middle class continues to get squeezed and squeezed, paying higher taxes to keep their community safe, even though they're electing representatives that are not doing anything for their people. So when we look at solutions and how do we really fix this problem, you would figure that you put faith in the education system and in the youth of our nation, right? Wrong. This is actually a video that came from Fleckus Talks, where you actually have a guy on the street asking some Gen Zers if they know simple things that you would figure they'd be learning in our public education system. For example, who was involved in World War II, who was involved in the Civil War, things about American history, states, geographical locations, your basics, right? Wrong.
Do you know how many stars there are on the U.S. flag?
52.
Yes. What state is Utah in?
Michigan.
Yes. Do you know what state Utah is in?
Utah, to be honest with you, I never heard of that place ever in my life. I live under a rock.
Do you know who fought in the Civil War?
Who fought in the Civil War? Like from the president?
No, like who against who?
It was the Nazis versus Germany. No. Yes. No. I'm going to say yes, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes. You actually just guessed that?
Nah, yeah. I'm kind of smart.
You didn't know that? Oh. Did they teach you that in school or what?
They taught me it, but I just guessed it now. But
Yeah, so
it's like I forgot, but
yeah,
I mean,
it was probably in the back of your head and like it came up.
yeah.
How many Kardashian sisters can you name?
Kendall Jenner, Kylie Jenner, Kim Kardashian, Khloe Kardashian, Kourtney Kardashian. Is that all? That's all.
Yeah, that's all of them for sure.
Smart.
Yeah, dude, you're a genius.
I hope this scares a lot of people. The reason I say that is because as you see, not to clown on this chick, because clearly you can tell in the video, I think she's a little bit embarrassed. But the fact is that a majority of our population knows more about celebrity culture than American culture. They know more about who the Kardashians are than geographical states in the United States, which is very alarming. The fact is if you don't know where Utah is, you've probably been living under a rock. You see these videos, and these aren't the only ones. If you guys want to check out more, I know that Will Witt had actually done a ton of these on college campuses across the country that you can find on PragerU. But the fact is that what are they exactly learning in our public education system, right? Like you have the federal government that controls and stipulates what kids learn. It seems like they're more or less being taught how to memorize instead of critically think. And they're definitely like completely failing in regards to some of the basics that I think you need to adult and just have common sense. Honestly, it seems like these people are being dumbed down because if you're dumb, you're easier to control. But I mean, I feel honestly bad because these people are now functioning members of society and they don't know some of the basics. And then we wonder why places like China are basically eating our lunch in regards to the tech industry, in regards to the scientific community, and even in sometimes medical research and advances. It's honestly very scary. So again, if you have the opportunity to get involved in your kids' education, highly recommend that you do because this is what they're teaching our kids. And then we obviously see it, 10, 20 years down the line, we're wondering why some of these terrible policies are coming out of the White House. For example, gender identity training, mandatory. I mean, that's not something that we need to be focusing on with our U.S. military at all, right? Qualifications, how to fight a war and how to win the wars should be the focus, not this crazy woke culture and ideology. Speaking more of the Biden White House, as we had covered on Taco Gate, we finally have a face to the person that thought it was a good idea to call Hispanics tacos. And to my surprise, his name is Michael La Rosa. So he was apparently, maybe I assume he's Hispanic, but the fact is that it was quietly announced a couple days ago that Jill Biden's press secretary is no more and is on his way out of the White House, which comes as no surprise. Obviously, we know that was a huge fiasco already. Again, I'll say this again, the Hispanic demographic is on its way out from the Democrat Party. And the more that the Biden administration tries to put their claws and the Democrats try to put their claws into the largest voting minority in the country, the more it is backfiring. So we're here for it. We're here to cover it. But to end on a positive note, adios, Michael, let's talk about our Florida man and our first Florida woman of the week. Out of Brevard County here in Florida, we have a man that basically stole a truck, drove it to Space Force Command, and said that he was instructed by the President of the United States. We assume Joe Biden. Just kidding. That's not what he said. But he did say that he was instructed by the President of the United States to warn Space Force of a potential U.S. alien fighting with Chinese dragon invasions. So he drove to Patrick Air Force Base, where he was ultimately stopped. I could only imagine the face on the security forces officers that were talking to this guy as he's ranting about an apparent Space Force dragon and alien invasion. But nonetheless, he did think that he was talking to the President of the United States, so we could only assume that him and Joe Biden are on the same wavelength. Corey Allen Johnson has been booked and charged with grand theft of an auto vehicle and has bail set for $3,000. So I don't think he'll be getting out anytime soon. Nonetheless, if you get any reports of dragons or aliens, you know who to call. Our first Florida woman of the week. Now, this video is a little bit alarming. She decided to grab a pitchfork and Publix was involved. Check it out. Okay, so as you can see, she is literally, I think she's holding a teddy bear and she is running around. This was taken from the dash cam of a law enforcement officer. She's running around holding a pitchfork trying to sell this. And apparently, as someone drove by, she actually took the pitchfork and jabbed the minivan. So I don't know if that's going to be something that'll be a new selling point. But her name was Lisa Ann Sloan, walked in front of a trooper's vehicles, whipped and with a whip and a pitchfork in hand during a downpour. She was 56 years old. Obviously, seriously, I think on drugs, but she was definitely trying to sell that teddy bear outside of Publix and stabbed a minivan en route. Point is, kids, stay away from drugs. But later she was booked in Lake County Jail. And all kidding aside, if you're ever in this situation, whatever you do, don't tell women to calm down. It only seems to make it worse. Nonetheless, she again will be our Florida woman for the first time of the week. And again, if you find Florida men or women of the week, please make sure you're tagging us on all of our social media at Real Anna Paulina so that we can feature you guys in our next upcoming episodes. All right, moving on to questions from you guys. So as you guys know, once a week, we take questions from the audience on various social media platforms where we want to actively get you guys engaged. So this week, there seems to be a massive focus, and I'm not just seeing it on social media chatter. I'm seeing it in the media. I'm seeing it in conversations across, frankly, both political sides, Republicans and Democrats. So the question was, who will be the DNC nominee for 2024? I think we've addressed this slightly in the past, but as you guys know, and as you guys have been hearing, Michelle Obama has been floated many times as a potential Democrat nominee for the DNC. Frankly, I don't really think, and this is not just because I'm a Republican or I'm conservative, honestly, it doesn't seem like the Democrats have a stellar candidate across the board. Had they not had big tech, they probably really wouldn't have a platform or the corporate media in their back pockets. But I digress. It is being seriously talked about Michelle Obama and Meghan Markle potentially considering running for office. Now, a lot of people, when Prince Harry and Meghan Markle came back to the United States because of the fact that she was very left-leaning and political, there was already initial chatter, but this is something that's now being seriously talked about. Frankly, it is alarming. Meghan Markle is very left-leaning. She's made it known on a number of occasions that she does not like conservative politics or ideology, and she's now using her platform as a former member of the royal family to voice her opinions on this. Mind you, the royal family, one of their things is they're not supposed to get political. She is inherently exploiting that. But there's talk that she will be running. And then also to remember that cringy video that we had of Gavin Newsom where he seemed to be pitching himself against Ron DeSantis. Yeah, I think that he's going to be actually running for office. And that'll be something that we'll probably see here in the next couple of months as we continue towards the midterms. It's always historically done that people will announce their presidencies right after the midterm elections. So I think as we keep an eye on this, you'll see that happen. And then for the RNC ticket, there's no question that President Trump, when he does announce that he will be the number one contender of the GOP, I think anyone who runs against him is committing political suicide because there's no way with Trump's national favorability among the GOP that he would, and GOP voters, that he would lose that nomination. But I do think that there are going to be a couple of people that might try, but I'm not even going to mention them because frankly, it's not likely that they're going to even be able to win the nomination. Okay, so the next question I had was, Democrats realize Hispanics are conservative. How will they try to divide us? And it's simple. Race, race, race. As you see, I've been continuously covering some of these headlines and the tactics coming out of the corporate media and also to social media reporters that are using the race card to an attempt to divide the Hispanic demographic. And it is interesting that anyone that steps outside of this box stereotype, that they will automatically blanket label an extremist and then they try to discredit them, right? So that is going to be something as we continue to see this focus and shift from other demographics to the Hispanic demographic because it's the largest voting minority in the country. You will continue to see that racist ideology and push within the corporate media to divide us as a country. And frankly, the only way to fight back against that is to literally call them out for it, to put the correct information out, but also to don't be afraid of leaving the echo chamber and actually having these conversations with people, other platforms, frankly, even other media sources, because it's important to make sure that your message is not just staying in one area, but that you're sharing that information. And then also too, guys, if you have a platform and you are a thought leader, if you are an activist, if you are a social media content producer, make sure that you're actually raising up other leaders. Anytime someone is aligning, I do my best to try to collaborate them and help raise their voices because frankly, they can suppress just one person, but they can't suppress 40 of them, right? And so it's a lot harder to suppress the message if there's more people that are carrying the torch. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning back into this week's episode of From the Desk of Anna Paulina Luna. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave us your comments about our episodes. You can also ask us questions and tune back in next week as we continue to cover some of the crazy headlines that we're seeing, not just in the state of Florida, but across the nation and the world, from the desk of Anna Paulina Luna.